If you spend any time on the internet, you have run into the standard arguments for Islam, the scientific miracles. In the Quran, they prophesies that allegedly came true, and the idea that an unlettered man in 7th century Arabia couldn't possibly have fabricated this. But if we peel back the layers of emotional attachment and look at this through the lens of strict historical analysis, philosophy, and cognitive psychology, a very different picture emerges. We're going to look at why these claims fall apart under scrutiny and how figures like the philosopher David Hume completely dismantled the concept of miracles, and how human psychology alone explains the rapid spread and convincing nature of early Islam. For example, take the famous claim about embryology. In the Quran, the stages of the fetus described as a drop of fluid, a cleaning clot, and showed flesh. Apologists claim this is miraculously accurate, but if you open a history textbook, you realize this wasn't divine revelation. It was the prevailing scientific consensus of the Mediterranean world at the time. The Greek physicians Galen and Aristotle wrote down these exact stages centuries before Muhammad was born. Syriac Christian translations of Galen's medical texts were widely circulated in pre-Islamic Arabia, specifically in medical hubs like Andishapur. Muhammad didn't get this from God, he got it from the surrounding culture. Furthermore, many of these miracles rely entirely on modern linguistic gymnastics. The "txt to science fallacy", an Arabic word with five vague poetic meanings, is selected. Apologists pick the one meaning that vaguely sounds like a modern scientific concept, ignoring how 7th century Arabs actually understood the verse. If the Quran explicitly stated the exact speed of light, the structure of DNA, or the atomic weight of gold in unmistakable terms, that would be a miracle. Instead, we get vague poetry that only becomes scientific after modern scientists have already done the hard work of discovering the truth. This is a favorite one on TikTok and YouTube. Apologists quote Surah 51:47, and haven't we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expander. They claim this perfectly predicts Edwin Hubble's 20th century discovery that the universe is expanding. But this is a textbook example of retrofitting modern science into ancient text. The Arabic word used is "musi'un". For over 1,000 years, the classical Quranic commentators like Ibn Kathir, al-Tabari, and al-Qurtubi, who knew Arabic far better than any modern internet apologist, never interpreted this as physical cosmic expansion. They translated it as "we are the possessors of vastness, wealth, or we gave it ample space." It was a statement about God's immense power and capability, a common idiom in classical Arabic. And the shift to translating it specifically as "we are expanding it" only happened after modern physics discovered cosmic expansion. And if the Quran meant physical expansion, why did God hide that meaning from every single companion of the Prophet and classical scholar for 1,300 years? Another massive claim is that the Quran accurately describes the deep structure of the earth by stating, "Have we not made the earth a resting place, and the mountains as peaks?" Autad. Apologists claim this refers to isostasy, the geological concept that mountains have deep roots symbolizing the Earth's crust. From a scientific standpoint, this is actually a scientific error, not a miracle. And how mountains actually work. Mountains do not act like tent pegs. They do not anchor the Earth's crust or stop it from shaking. In fact, mountains are formed by tectonic plate collisions. They are the result of violent geological instability. And earthquake fault lines are heavily concentrated precisely around mountain ranges like the Himalayas or the Andes. Mountains don't prevent earthquakes, they live right on the top of them. And the ancient perspective, the idea of mountains as peaks holding down a flat or shaken earth wasn't new. It was a common pre Islamic Near Eastern myth. In ancient Hebrew cosmology, the earth was envisioned as a flat disk resting on waters, and mountains were literal pillars holding up the dome of heaven or anchoring the land so it wouldn't drift. The Quran is merely repeating the primitive visual geology of its era. This brings us to the ultimate philosophical roadblock for any religious miracle claim. The 18th century Scottish philosopher David Hume. Hume wrote a definitive essay called Of Miracles, and his logic is simple. He argued that our belief in any event should be proportional to the evidence. A miracle is by definition a violation of the laws of nature. And Hume's core maxim is this: no testimony is sufficient to establish a miracle unless the testimony is of such a kind that its falsehood would be more miraculous than the fact which it endeavors to establish. And let's apply this to Islam. Why it's more likely that the laws of physics, gravity, and biology were fundamentally broken in 7th century Arabia. For example, the moon splitting in half, a winged horse flying to heaven, leaving absolutely zero geological or global historical evidence. And that the human beings reporting these stories decades after the fact were mistaken, prone to the exaggeration, politically motivated, or superstitious. Human era myth making happen in every culture. Every day, a violation of the laws of nature does not. Therefore, rationally, it's always more logical to reject the miracle story. If Islam is a human made, how did it succeed so spectacularly? This is where we look at psychological and sociological strategies employed by the Prophet Muhammad. He wasn't just a religious figure, he was a master politician and an acute judge of human nature. And the Quran is a masterclass in psychological behavior modification. It relies heavily on extreme contrast, intense graphic depiction of hellfire, melting skin, drinking boiling water, immediately followed by lush, sensual description of paradise, flowing rivers, silk robes, companions. Psychologically, this creates a powerful loop of anxiety and relief, cementing deep emotional compliance. And look how pre Islamic Arabia was fractured by tribal warfare. Muhammad brilliantly bypassed this by creating a super tribe, the Ummah, the humanity of believers. If you joined, you were part of the chosen elite. If you stayed out, you were the enemy, the kafir, disbeliever. This leveraged deep seated evolutionary tribal instinct, making exit from the group feel like a social death sentence. And look at how Islam was revealed in the early days in Mecca. When Muhammad lacked power, the verses were peacefully tolerant and focused on spirituality. And the Quran said, to you, your religion, to me, mine. But once he migrated to Medina, and gained army and established the state, the tone shifted drastically to legislation warfare and political dominions. This is a classic psychological escalation, winning people over with soft power before introducing hard control mechanisms. When you put it all together, they borrow in of contemporary scientific flaws, the historical reality of human prediction, the philosophical weight of Hume's critique, and the sharp employment of human psychology. The conclusion becomes clear. Islam does not require a supernatural explanation. It bears all the hallmarks of its time, its geography, and its human creator. It is a brilliant, highly adaptive socio-political system engineered by a charismatic 7th century leader that successfully tapped into the universal mechanics of human belief.